That's right. I saw a dog walking a man, and I'm completely confounded on what to think. No, I wasn't high or drunk. I saw it when I was out for one of my runs. At first, I just figured the man was one of those people that would drag their slow dogs along, but as my distance shortened, I realized it was the dog guiding the man. I know what you're thinking. Sometimes dogs do that, and I would say sure, but the dog was directing the man from behind. Even more bewildering was the fact that the dog clenched a leash tightly in its jaws, while the curious man had his collar firmly clasped around his neck. As I ran past, I gave the odd man a polite wave, thinking he would do the same in return. Instead, his dead eyes roamed around as he tilted his head side to side, though the dog gave me a bit of a bow. I just shook my head, trying to brush off the entire situation as nothing more than the circumstances of a big city life. I've always seen the bizarre while running. In fact, that's one of the reasons I like to run. It's the people watching, seeing others live their lives as I sprint past. Sometimes they wave hi to me, and other times they seem to block my path purposely. Either way, it's always something different. I've seen plenty of muggings. When that happens, I try my best not to stare too hard, not wanting to get caught up in the situation. I tend to speed up. I've seen plenty of arguments, typically between couples, sometimes neighbors. I once saw a homeless man yelling at a rat that seemed to be running away with some of his belongings. It's the life of the big city, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Well, I did until I got older. My kids pleaded with me to move away somewhere more safe. I guess in their minds as I aged, I was becoming more brittle. Which makes me laugh since I'm not that old, but they are protective of me. My wife passed away from an illness when both my kids were little, so it was just me doing my best to raise two girls. As you can imagine, I was their hero, their protector. And as I knock on the door of turning 60, they feel as they need to watch over me. I care about my daughters. They mean the world to me. So I thought instead of moving out of the city, which I loved, I would move to a condo that was within a gated community. To add to the illusion of more safety, I moved to one that was predominantly occupied by the elderly. It wasn't a retirement home or anything like that. It was just one that seemed to cater to older people. I figured if they wanted to treat me as if I was old, then I would act the part. Anything to make them happy. I continued with my running, but instead of prancing through the gritty streets of lunacy, I would sprint around the complex's trail that was meant for walking. I usually got dirty looks from my neighbors for running at the speed I was. This is when I first noticed the strange obsession my little community had with dogs. For the record, I don't like them. I find them to be a bit obnoxious, always demanding attention, and their appetite is never satiated. In the past, when a dog would growl at me, I would bark back to the much astonishment of the owner. I would then feel a jovial smile erupt on my face every time. Though now, as I journeyed through the gardens of my new home, I noticed that people treated their dogs as if they were humans. I would see people sitting their dogs on chairs as they ate. Some even dressed them up in people clothes. At this stage in my life, I thought I had seen it all. And apparently, I was wrong. As months passed, I tried my best to ignore the bizarre behavior of my new community. And while doing so, I met my new best friend, Tom. He was the only other tenant that was not considered elderly. In fact, he was a bit younger than me. I think he was entering his 50s. He told me that he liked living amongst the elderly, that he too was all too used to the big city, but unlike me, he despised it. His job didn't allow him to move far, so finding this community was a blessing. It gave him the protection and solitude he so desperately sought, solace away from the terror that took place in the darkened streets of our inundating city. It was almost instant that Tom and I hit it off. We enjoyed the same sports, the same politics, but even more delightful was that we both couldn't stand dogs, especially the ones that we found ourselves surrounded by. We spent most of our conversations making fun of the other residents and how they treated their furry friends. Tom even joked that it was the dogs that had humans as pets. The notion teared up my insides from laughter. Though, one thing was for sure, both me and Tom wouldn't be adopting a dog anytime soon. Apparently the condo board had some program with the shelter where any resident could adopt one of the animals. Something about not wanting the tenants to feel alone, and that the pet would help with that. I couldn't see how. To me, those darn little creatures would spike my anxiety rather than calm it. But whatever, I guess. Me and my new best friend would just ridicule the situation the more and more involved people would become. Everything was great. Even under the strange circumstances, I enjoyed the space of my new home to the fullest. The walking trails filled with the aroma of lilac as I ran past each day a new mystifying display of affection for the abysmal animals. Sometimes Tom would join me for a run, and it was one of those days that seemed to change everything. We were turning the corner, and we got into a bit of a competitive pace. I was the better runner, but since Tom was younger, he was hell-bent on beating me. As he took the lead, I saw our turn coming up, a steep point that could easily lead to injury. So as I slowed, Tom only sped up. And as he disappeared behind the building, I heard the most horrifying sound. One of pure anguish. It was the whimper of a dog. I hurried with intensity. I could sense the feeling of dread growing in my gut as I came to the gruesome scene. To my dismay, I saw my best friend standing over a small dog, confounded on what to do. The small animal convulsed as it slowly drifted into the afterlife. It seemed as if Tom had crushed its head as he fell on top of it. Worse were the ghastly screams coming from the owner. The old woman laid sobbing next to her once friend, cradling its small body in her arms. After a few minutes, Tom snapped out of his bewilderment and began profusely apologizing to the woman, as her sobs only became louder. This is when I noticed something alarming, if not terrifying. The old woman began to growl. A hideous snarl formed on her withered face, and as he attempted to offer a consoling hand, she bit him. My face froze with utter befuddlement, and Tom, well, he was horrified. The old woman's growl grew with absolute malice as her haunting voice carried through the narrow corridors of a condo. Soon, more tenants came out to see what was happening. First, it was the dogs, and soon after were the owners. Something about the faces on the elderly left me feeling threatened. I forcefully grabbed Tom and pulled him away from the devastating scene. I didn't want to be around for whatever was happening. And soon, all the people and the dogs gathered around the old woman what I can only call some bewildering memorial. After that day, Tom kept to himself. I don't know if he felt guilty about killing the dog or perhaps destroying the life of the elderly woman. Though, the images of her biting my friend haunted me for weeks. The vicious snarl dancing around the corners of my mind whenever I would try to sleep. Eventually, our community relapsed into normality. I continued running, and my neighbors delved deeper into the lunacy of dog ownership. Sometimes they would have events celebrating the animals. I usually kept my distance whenever that would happen. As the weeks passed, I missed my friend, especially when you are surrounded by a sea of insanity. At first, it was funny pointing at the demented people, but now it's a bit scary. So I had to visit Tom, make sure he was okay. So I went to his apartment. I figured either he would let me in or remain quiet. As I walked down the corridor leading up to Tom's flat, I could hear the dogs from the neighboring apartments barking with madness as I walked past each door. The deafening sound sent a chill up my back, causing me to quicken my pace. By the time I reached his door, I had my hands over my ears trying to drown out the excruciating howling. If it was this bad for me, I can only imagine how isolated my friend must have felt these last few weeks. I read once that dogs have a pack mentality, each one protective over the other, and from the excessive barking, it was clear that me and Tom were the enemy. I knocked on the door, and at first I heard nothing. No sounds of movement, as if Tom was purposely trying to stay still, trying to remain quiet, hoping I would go away. So, I knocked a few more times, but only harder. He needed to answer the door. I wanted to know my friend was okay. That's when I heard it. The most horrendous sound. It was the growling of a dog. I could hear the steps of paws scurrying towards the door as I took a step back from astonishment. And that's when Tom finally opened the door. Right away, I could tell something was off. He looked different. My eyes darted up and down, trying to figure out what had changed. And only when he spoke did I look back up to him and realize what it was. He had some smudge on his face, like a blurred pixel. "Hey man," Tom told me. He looked unnerved, as if everything was normal. Me, on the other hand, well, anyone could tell by my bulging, widened eyes, I was at a loss for words. "Hey Tom, how you been, man? I see you have a dog now," I told my friend with a shaky tone. Truth be told, I could feel my own lip quiver from absolute fear. Tom then looked me up and down, studying me slowly with a stoic gaze, only to lock eyes with me, and then smile. "I was wrong. Dogs are the best. They truly are man's best friend. I mean, look at the little guy. He knows what's best. And as long as I do what he wants, then everything is great," he said to my dismay. "Wait, what do you mean, if you do what it..." I paused. That's when Tom bent over and picked up the small dog, caressing it in his arms. I was left with disbelief. How could this be the same guy that was just as annoyed with dogs as I was? Tom then started talking to the animal with the tone of a baby, as the monstrosity engulfed his face with drool as it licked every inch of his face. I stood there looking on with pure bewilderment, not knowing what to do or what to say. My mind traveling to the furthest realms of the universe, trying to escape the horrid scene that was unfolding before me. My friend then stopped his makeout session to turn to me, his eyes void of any existence, like an empty shell you would find on a beachside, as globs of drool slithered down his face. And that's when I ran back home. It was that moment that I realized something strange was happening here in the home of the elderly. People are going mad. And before having someone like Tom by my side left the threatening sensation of fear subside. But without him, I faced the evil alone. I decided to move out. I wasn't going to give any notice. I was just going to leave. So I packed up my things in one night, ready to get as far away from this place as I could. I was going to leave the next night. The morning after, I decided to go for one last run. I needed energy if I had to make a haste escape. And this is something I regret. The morning breeze was delightful. The scent of lilac overwhelmed my smell as I truthfully enjoyed the last day of this bizarre community. I couldn't tell you why or how. Sometimes things happen, and we are left with regret. The what-ifs or the could-have. As I rounded the last stretch of my trail, I had completely forgotten about the sharp turn. The same place where things changed for me and my former best friend. My ankles gave out as I tried to slow down at the last minute. And all I remember was hearing the cracking sounds of pure destruction. I promptly fell to the ground with a heavy thud as absolute pain inundated my body. I laid on the floor grabbing at my legs as I realized my shin bone was protruding from my leg. Blood poured out on the concrete as I screamed out in pure anguish. I don't remember what happened. I suppose I blacked out. I remember waking up in my bedroom with both my legs bandaged. I could feel the room spinning as the haze of fog slowly dissipated from my vision. That's when I heard the most dreadful sound. The sounds of paws colliding against my hardwood floors. There was a dog in my apartment. The animal came in with a small note clenched between its jaws. The beast jumped onto my bed, dropping the letter next to me. As I picked up the note, I felt the intense stare from the creature, almost as if it was observing me, as if I were some caged animal in an exhibit. I read the note, and my heart dropped. It was from the condo board. "Sorry for your injury on the premises. Here we want all of our tenants to have a pleasant way of life. And to help on your road to recovery, we have issued you your own helping dog from our adoption agency. We are sure you and your new furry friend will soon build a bond that will last the both of you a lifetime. Get well soon." I don't know what's happening here, in this place, but whatever it is, it's something sinister. The dog watches my every move. It feeds me and gives me water. It takes care of me. I couldn't tell you what it is, but it's almost like the dog can talk to me. I imagine hearing its voice calling out to me, telling me how good I've been. And sometimes it joins me on the bed, patting my head with its snout. I know I don't have much time. I can feel myself changing, like my mind is drifting away into the current of emptiness as my body gives in to the affection the dog shows me. I need to recover quick so I can leave this place before it's too late. Hi guys, as usual, thank you for listening to my story, and happy Halloween, because you are listening to this on Halloween, and if it's already over and you're still listening to it, well thanks. Hope you had a good Halloween. Anyway, yeah, I hope everyone's been good. I know it's been a few weeks since I released a video. I'm trying to write a little bit of writer's block, but hopefully I get back into the swing of things. October didn't go exactly how I thought it would with my stories, but 2 stories in October I think is pretty good. Anyway, like I said, I hope everybody's been good and they have a great Halloween, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Alrighty, bye.